How are you this morning, Polly?
I'm doing okay. How about you guys?
Doing well. I know that weather really shouldn't affect your mood or anything, but it kind of does for me. And thankfully, we've had a Iowa. It beginning about this time of year, it can be you don't really know what the weather can do. We can have like a really nice like weather pattern, or it can get cold or it can be really hot. It's just you don't really know, and we've had really nice weather, so it's just been good weather for being outside, and
Mm.
anytime I can be outside, I'm happy.
Amen to that. That's what I like about Florida.
Yeah, no, and here, there's people that really enjoy the cold and like being out in it, but I don't. I mean, I can do it, but it just, I think I'm not that old, but I'm 42, and I worked with my hands for a long time, and so you notice the older I get, like when it gets
Oh yeah,
cold, your joints get stiffer, and like it's like I feel like everything gets tighter.
I'm 62. You're preaching to the choir.
So it doesn't get better by the time like another 20 years for me.
It's better when you go up.
Yeah,
But yeah, with the warm weather and the humidity, it kind of helps that.
yeah, I sense that. Like for me, I love whenever we'll say it'll be this time of year. I have allergies in the Midwest pretty
Well,
bad.
you don't want to come here then.
Well, it's interesting because I wasn't sure what Florida would be like. Because when I go to the Caribbean, I have no allergies ever. Like if I get on the plane here and I'm sneezing, when I land wherever in the Caribbean, I feel like a new man. It's amazing the difference.
Well, what's interesting is I didn't have any when I got here. You may not have them when you get here, but over time, you, I
Interesting.
don't. It's kind of weird, but
Yeah, where are you originally from?
New York.
Okay.
And so Martha's not on today. She's from New York City, right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
And I know the Ugandan guys said that they were going to be joining, but they may just be a little late, depending on connectivity
Yeah.
things. So
But I'm like you. I didn't really. Somebody offered me a job in Florida, and I said, "Hey, let's try that." I'm not big on shoveling snow and freezing. I don't like it when my nose freezes.
yeah,
So
and your fingers and everything, it's like.
it makes it harder.
And I think you guys, honestly though, it's interesting. I think we get colder weather here in the Midwest than you guys would get in New York, but you guys would get more snow.
Yeah, lake effect.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it's been fine here. This year's been extraordinarily hot, but I only know that because I've been outside working so much. But um, almost everything's air conditioned. You can go outside almost every day. It's all right. I
yeah,
just thinking about maybe getting out of the city.
yeah. No, that makes sense. We have some good friends that live in Puerto Rico, and we've considered, because we've thought about you can buy property really cheap in Puerto Rico, and so we've
Yeah.
considered, like as like a long term
You
plan.
ever heard of hurricanes?
Yeah,
They just got hammered by two of them.
yeah. We would
So
love
I don't
to.
know. It's what they say in the Bible is things start spinning up.
Yeah,
Um, it seems like there's been a lot more natural disasters. Of course, today we're a day closer, but than yesterday. But man, we've done ministry with a pastor in the Bahamas, and they've been devastated.
yeah. We
The
were.
last storm sat over that area for 48 hours and just wiped off the face of the earth everything we did for the last 15 years. Just a 3-story concrete block building that tell me it was sturdy. Gone.
Yeah,
He got washed out of the 3rd floor.
yeah. It's crazy. My son and I went. Um, we were we were there in Marsh Harbor last year over Thanksgiving. We went and we had a couple of partners that were there, and so we went, and most of what we do is mobilization work, but it's one of those things we tell people. It's like when someone it's like the Acts church, you know, it's like when one of your partners or one of the people you're working with is affected, you have to help them. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
believe in that. And so we had some supporters donate money to buy some chainsaws, some like really nice chainsaws, and brought them down. And we worked for like 4 days, but it just seemed so overwhelming because I mean, you can run a chainsaw all day long for 4 days, and it's like you make a little teeny dent in one little
Right.
corner. You know, it's
Oh, I know. We worked with Sam's Perth there. We actually went up to North Carolina and flew their caravan over for them and supplied a pilot. So,
ah,
but there was enough work for everybody, and they're still devastated. I mean, High Rock is gone. I mean, they won't recover for years, I don't think. And a
yeah,
lot of the people that we've been working with are gone. All the tools I left there are in the ocean someplace.
yeah.
It was weird,
It,
but I haven't been back yet.
it's hard to even imagine that scale. You know, I mean, I think most of us, at least here in the Midwest, you know, we'll have,
Hmm.
and our country's so big, you know,
You have
that
a
like if
tornado.
we have a natural disaster, it might affect an area, but then the rest of the country can rally around and help out, and we have the finances to kind of bail people out. But when you're on an island and you know the whole thing gets hit, I mean, where do you go? How do you
Well,
know, it's
Freeport didn't actually get hit that hard, but High Rock was wiped off the face of the island. It stalled right across, right above High Rock, which is halfway to the Abacos. It just at 2 o'clock in the morning, he got washed out of the third floor, ended up in the top of a 32-foot pine tree. It's just,
wow.
I mean, you have no idea. I mean, you cannot wrap your brain around going through something like that. And then um, after that 6 months or within a year of that, he buried his wife. And so she died of cancer, but they were in South Florida. So my daughter and I jumped in the car and drove down there and went out to dinner with him and met and visited with him for a bit before he, and then took him to the airport. But that's why our hopes in the future, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
I don't know, these people without faith, no wonder there's an epidemic of suicide.
yeah. Well, and I think that's, you know, like us doing, like as we move forward today, I think, you know, it even with everything going on and with COVID, you know, sometimes, I mean, to be honest, even myself, I can, you know, you can step back and be like, what in the world, we're talking about doing missions and going to places and all this stuff, and you know, you feel like, well, how does that work right now?
Boom,
But the
gone.
reality is that is our only purpose, um, our
Well,
only reason for being here is to bring light into, especially into the darkest areas,
right.
you know. And so it only makes sense that we continue moving forward in this and believing, yeah, it's going to be, you know, I sometimes laugh, not to get political here, but I laugh after spending time in the Caribbean. Every Christian I know in the Caribbean has no problem believing in climate change. And here it's become a political issue. And I think, you know, it actually seems to me like a biblical thing. You know, we're talking about this stuff, how things are going to change and get worse, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
and that doesn't need to be discouraging. Quite contrary, it can be encouraging to say, hey, the time is getting closer. Therefore, we need to speed up our desire for doing the work. And so as we start to go into today, was everybody here able to get the email that I sent last night? If not, it's okay. I just wanted to see if you were able. There was a couple people that like their email address said that the files were too large for them to receive it. So I don't know how that works, but
I got it, but I didn't look at it yet.
yeah, it's all like a link to Google Drive because it's too many files to send like via attachments. But we'll talk kind of like in an overview first. So basically, you know, like I said last week, we have finished up the seminar, and normally the way that we run these seminars is they're meant to be. I think some of you had vocalized that you knew about, for example, perspectives on the world Christian movement, and then there's also a course called Kairos. Both very good programs. Both of those are much more in depth than what we are doing with Storyline seminars. The goal with the storyline seminar is to give some similar information, but do it in a one-day course. What we've observed, especially in most of the world where we travel and we're trying to help with mobilization efforts, is that you often don't have, first of all, pastors are very busy, probably, in my opinion, even busier than here in the States, because they're often working another job and they're, trying to do the ministry. And so to get them to go to, like, we'll say a perspectives program and commit to 15 weeks is, and then the cost and all of that, it's like, how in the world are they going to do that? So that's why we tried to make something to where it can be run in a day, and then we can also work through handing off the actual, all of the files needed to do the seminar, and it can be reproduced very easily. So it doesn't require a lot of in-depth training to be able to reproduce this course. You guys saw the PowerPoint slides. There's 3 sections that we go through, and they're basically roughly divided up as the first section. If you are taking notes, we have all these files here, so you'll be able to, like, refresh things. But the first section is really just the biblical basis of missions. And that, when you're doing the seminar, tends to be the longest, most, I would say, arduous, when you're teaching, because there's a lot of material. When you're thinking the biblical basis of missions, you're going from, Genesis all the way through Revelation, and there's just a lot to cover. And so you're trying to just hit on the points. And to me, that can be the most grueling when you're teaching. The second section of our seminar is the history, what we call the history of modern missions. So I usually try to kind of almost do a disclaimer saying, hey, it's not like everything stopped at the book of Acts and then restarted in the 1700s, because it kind of looks that way, the way we have it structured. But we kind of fast forward through that period just because we only have so much time, and we want to pick up with what we call, the era in which we are living in, which is the modern era of missions. And so then we kind of go through that. And then the final section is the practical side. What do we do with this? What are ways in which we can be involved? And so those are the main 3 sections that we go through. And they're, like, in your files, you'll see that even the PowerPoints are divided up that way. It'll say, like, lesson 1, lesson 2, and lesson 3. And then there even is a file that has all of them together. And we did that just because what we've learned is when you go to different countries, Poly, especially a place like Cuba, things can be quite interesting because of, they've got their own pirated version of PowerPoint and their own pirated version of Microsoft Word and all of that. And so there's mostly similar, but it can be interesting. And then the technology, like, they might be running a computer from 2001, and so it's, you're trying to, so we have different ways of doing it. And I do have just plain PDF versions of all the PowerPoints. So maybe that's something that especially you, Polly, might be interested in down the road, because sometimes, PowerPoint won't open right and all of these things. But the thing I've learned in places like Cuba too is a lot of times people are more flexible. If things aren't working quite right, you just move forward and modify. So also in the files, you'll see, so we have the facilitator's guide, which is, honestly, it's called Facilitator's Manual. And the Facilitator's Manual, you could potentially follow it word for word, and it would still be a decent, thing. Obviously, the goal is to look through that and then modify it. There's literally areas where it says, insert your story about this here, those types of things, because we want to make it as usable and as easy to be replicated as possible. We don't want someone to have to rewrite everything. Now, you can modify it as you see fit, with, as long as you're not, like, somehow making it into some sort of bizarre theological stand or something, but it's meant to be used and modified to what works best for you. Like, for example, Frank, who is my friend from Puerto Rico, he's been running on Wednesdays the Spanish version of the Storyline Seminar, and he's modified it heavily based on his experiences. He's like 62, 63 years old. He's done mission work all over the world, and he just modified it to what he felt like he needed to, and I trust him, and so it works out good, you know. So yeah, I'll do some more explaining, but do you guys have any questions about like what that might look like in your context, or just any questions at all about running a Storyline Seminar?
Just to clarify, everything you just mentioned is in this email you sent?
Yes, it's in a Google Drive link. So if you have any issues with that, please let me know, because there's a lot of files there, you know, pretty big files. So, you know, it's possible that there can be an issue opening something. You know, I shared access with all of you, but just let me know if you have any issues. And, you know, like what I usually do, hold on a second, I'll grab it. Depending upon your ability, and, you know, to access things, like, so we have a college here. It's like a Lutheran college, and they have a really good print facility. So I always have them do all my printing. So I had them print out. I sent them the file for the facilitator's guide, and they printed it out, put it in a binding, and I think it cost me $5. You know, and so and then you can take your own notes in it, and you know, you can carry this with you, so you have it, even if there is an issue with files and stuff like that on your computer. So I like to do that, because then this can kind of be your own, and it's, you know, wherever you're doing a seminar, you can use it as your own, if that makes sense. Any other questions?
No, I just would have a comment that I think it's good to go through material like your friend did and own it, make it your own, so it feels comfortable for you, and so you don't kind of slog through it or stumble over what somebody else is presenting. I do that with the MAF stuff that I get. I edit it so it's what, you know, so it flows when I present it, because it's my material now.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of positive in doing that, in that you're not just going through material because somebody thought that you should use it. And MAF is fine with that. You know, they want you to own your presentations, but that would just be my comment or thought along those lines.
Yeah. When I tried it, like I said, not that any of you would do that, but I put kind of a thing out there to say, like, obviously stay true to the heart of it. You know, like I've run into, you guys probably all know exactly what I mean. Sometimes when I've went to other places, for example, when I was in Haiti, I had 2 different interpreters because I don't speak Creole, and the one guy was doing really good. Like I had feedback from other people, you know, like actually, you know, interpreting what I was saying. Then there was another guy who was a pastor, and it was like he would go off on his own sermon, you know, like every time I would speak, you know, and they were like, this guy's adding all kinds of things and it's not even making sense, you know, because he's kind of making it his own. And so I'm sure you guys have all seen that and experienced that. But so there again, the only thing we ask is that people try to make sure the message is, you know, we're heading down the same path, but it doesn't somehow become, you know, some teaching on the second coming of Christ when it's supposed to be about the biblical basis of missions or whatever, you know, like I'm just making up something, but.
Well, that's really expanding what the material is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not appropriate.
Right. And it's not that stuff is bad, but we're like, okay, there's people that are getting sermons frequently on things that are maybe not so much about this, you know, let them get that we're meant to just help out the church and to be something that kind of, this is an area where we recognize that generally speaking, most churches aren't able to just create something like this. And so we're there to kind of fill in this niche. We don't want to creep into different whatever theological teachings about tithing, or those types of things. Like we want, those are kind of that's what we want the church to be doing, and we're here to kind of supplement the church. And so
well, also, if somebody does that, you've already, I'm sure, extreme review of this material, making sure everything's biblically accurate and scripturally based. And if somebody else takes it and goes someplace else, you have no idea what they're presenting.
Right.
And you have no review or control.
Right. And then it can get back to you and be like, wait a minute, we heard Storyline in XYZ country, and they started teaching about, how Jesus wants us to go play with poisonous snakes, and, I don't know, I'm making up something, but, and it's like, wait a minute, no, that's not what we're doing. So, yeah, included in these files also, there's some things that I tend not to use all that often. There's kind of some team building things, and a lot of those are, actually, they were first used in Russia and Ukraine. In my settings in the Caribbean, none of them have really seemed all that. Most people are like, hey, we're here to, team building's okay, but like we don't necessarily need to do some of these other things. We want because there are a bunch of different ministries coming together, and we've got limited time. And so you can use that stuff if it's appropriate in your setting, but there's no hard and fast rule to that. And then there's also a guide for how to train facilitators. Now, from my experience, if you are doing a smaller group and there are people who are wanting to know how to be a facilitator of the Storyline seminar, and people have especially like a background to some sort of ministry, or, for example, you guys, I feel like some of this can be very redundant using the how to train facilitators. It's kind of things like, hey, when you're in front of a group, try to kind of stand like this, and and it's geared towards like anybody can do this is the heart of it. Like it doesn't have to be someone that has experience, but if you're working with people that have experience, some of this can be very like, oh, we're really doing this. Like, I think I know how to talk to a group. I've been doing it for 30 years or whatever. You know what I mean? So I try to use my own judgment when it comes to those types of things. We had a lot of extra time like the second time I was in Cuba. And so I had everyone practice kind of going through a section. And some people really believe that that's the way you should do it, depending on your crowd. And it was really great. The thing that I loved about my experience in Cuba is we had a mixed group, about half guys and half girls. And, there again, what I observed nothing. So I used to be a pastor, so there's nothing against those of you who are pastors, but what I observed is it was funny because like a couple of the guys who were pastors, you could tell that their tendency was to shift into like a sermon mode, like less conversational, less interactive. And the by far the best person that was a facilitator was my friend Hernan's wife, who was not a pastor. And she was funny. Everybody was getting involved and interacting. And I asked him if it was okay, because I didn't want to like shame him or something. I asked him if it was okay if I mentioned the fact that she was the best. And, just because I wanted to draw, like, sometimes people think in a setting like that, it's like, well, I need to be, this older, mature male leader or something like this. And no, this is information that's meant to be shared by everyone. And it is, if you have a gift for teaching, especially, then this is a great way to do it. You're just sharing God's heart in whatever setting it would be. We've had 15-year-old girls in Cuba share with their youth groups and go through this seminar, and so we're just giving it to people and saying, this is for you. Use it how you need to use it. Does anybody have any other questions? All I know is I'm pretty sure that my scenery does not look like Samuel's right now. That looks beautiful, Samuel.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the, the sharing aspect, because I was involved in another seminar not too long ago, and the scaling in to be able to use their material is fairly involved. Like, you have to be involved in as a co-trainer for a certain number of times, and then you can't be a lead trainer until you've had a couple more times teaching with other people. So by the time you're done, you have to have, and each one of those training times is 8 weeks or something. So you're looking at,
Wow.
you're looking at 32 weeks maybe to try to finally be able to be a lead facilitator. So, like you say, if a person doesn't have a clue how to lead anything, then probably that's really important. But if you've been around, and done some ministry, then finally you say, well, is there any other tool I could use that would include a lot of the same information, but not make me have to get thousands of hours of time and logistical, even going to other cities or whatever, just to even find where I can be a part of these seminars. And sure, it probably creates a sense of security for quality, but it certainly does create a sense of time commitment and challenge. So that's where I'm very appreciative for the opportunity to consider using this tool as a substitute, which I don't have to put such a time investment into to get started. So
Yeah, I think people do that, like you said, Rick, because they want to make, there is, it's an interesting balance, and I'm not saying I have the answers, but, people want to make sure that things aren't being somehow misconstrued or all of this. But I think our philosophy comes in that we, especially with Storyline, our focus has been helping to mobilize what we call the majority world. And we're saying, hey, if we believe time is short and we need to get this message out there, then like we don't have like a year's worth of time to train people. Like, we need to get this out there, like really get it out there, and yes, we believe it's high quality, but also part of our value in being high quality is to be very easily reproducible, and not have to have as much of this. And I think that's also in my opinion, a very Western viewpoint, that whole academic element to Christianity. Yes, it's important to study and to know, but we've made things very academic when it comes to our faith and our walk. And no, I understand we have to be careful that we don't want to just be going kind of willy-nilly with things, but also if we are using the Acts Church as an example, we don't see them wasting a lot of time, to move forward and get the word out. And it's continual training. Always, we're always going to be in training until we die. But it's like, hey, let's move, let's do this, And we totally encourage people to go through like perspectives or kairos if that's a desire. It's not like we're trying to take away from what these other programs are doing. I was first on staff with Perspectives Global. I have no issue with Perspectives. I think it's a great program. It just, like I said, it can be, it's kind of like top shelf. You know what I mean? Like especially when you're working in a Latin American country where people only have so much money, or the Caribbean, for them to be able to, get the speakers and plan it out for 15 weeks and all of that. And there's, obviously there's more hybrid models now, but it just can be very cumbersome and slow. And that's not what we wanted to be. We wanted to be quick and nimble, and that's just our niche. So yeah, you guys, however you need to use it. And what are your thoughts, all of you, during this time, especially with COVID? What are your thoughts on like how you might be able to use it? I don't know, each region where you guys are at could be different as far as your regulations and being able to actually do a real seminar. So what are your thoughts about that? Anybody have any thoughts?
Okay, let me say something from Uganda. I would like to thank you so much for this lesson and materials. I think it's well arranged and well prepared and easy to use. And I think that's what I liked about it. And for us, we got, I'm calling it good news, challenging, but good news because it is this Sunday, upcoming Sunday, they allowed us to open churches this Sunday in Uganda. Although the cases are too many compared to when we closed. Opening churches, but children will not come to church, and very elderly people and people with some case problems, issues of health issues. But we allowed it to do like Friday and Sunday to only be able to meet like 70 people. So that is a plus for us. So we can only meet big number like 70 on Friday and Sundays. But on the other weekly days, we are also able to, you can always sneak in and meet 10 people as long as you meet them in a public place and in the right place. You are not hiding, and you are also keeping the health guidelines of washing hands and masks. I think this is gonna help us to, because we are at a time when the church is scattered, the people's leaders are scattered, and I think this is gonna help us to be able to bring a small group of people, like between 5 to 10. If you got 5, that's all, and it's gonna help us to train our leaders, the small groups. You know, I mean, organizing small groups of church leaders, and I think we appreciate, especially that now the lockdown has been relaxed a little bit. Thank you so much, and all of you people on the team, bless you.
Anybody else have any thoughts on how they might utilize the study or ideas about what they might do with it?
Thank you very much, Josh. I'm sorry I came late. But thank you for the study concerning missions around the globe. You know, this is going a long way to change our mentality, because as Africans, we've been thinking that missionaries have to come to us all through. But this is like showing if God is a global God, we must be global Christians. We must go to where God is going, not to be in our own locality. So to confess my sins, I've not been teaching the church about missions. All I teach about missions, it's within Uganda, but now I'm seeing the world God, the global mission. I'm seeing God is people all over the world that may need my people, they may need me. So the teachings are going to be global, like to encourage people to go globally and reach out to the people who need to be reached out. And it's going to break our comfort I mean, to come out of our cocoon, our limitation, such that we may have a global focus other than a local focus. If they came to us, then we must go also somewhere. Yeah, thank you. That's really what has blown my mind throughout all these studies.
Thank you for that, Samuel. That's really good. I mean, honestly, that's one of the big parts of our goals is, you know, we know that in the modern history, in the last, you know, especially 100 years, those of you in Africa, a lot of times when you think of a mission worker, you think of some white person. But the reality is, you know, Jesus and the gospel message is not it's not a white man's message. It's not it's not something that even originated, you know, a friend of mine told me this once. He's a funny guy. He's a Chinese Chinese American guy, and he said, you know, he's like, you realize Jesus was Asian, right? Because we're just always joking about things. But the point is a lot of times, because of this modern history that we've lived in, Christianity seems so tied in with those of us that are European background. That's really, you know, being short-sighted of the gospel message and of Scripture as a whole. You know, the Bible really didn't take place. I mean, even the setting, you know, was mostly in Asia and in Africa, you know, and so it's interesting to reflect upon that and just remember that, yes, missions is totally for all of us. And it's exciting to think of how you guys, what things will look like, you know, what will, if Christ doesn't come back before that, what will things look like in 50 years? Who will be writing the books on missions and missiology? It could easily be some of you Ugandans writing these books, you know, and so that's, to me, that's very exciting. Does anybody else have any thoughts about what they will do? One of the things we really try to encourage people to do that go through the seminar is to reproduce it. And one of the things, it's not always easy to remember to do that, but we love hearing feedback about those who do reproduce it. It's been really fun to see, like, some of our Russian partners have done the storyline seminar in places like Azerbaijan and Mongolia. And so it's with believers in those places. And these are places where there's not huge numbers of believers, you know, and so it's just really encouraging to think about that. And so I would really encourage you guys, whatever you do with it, I would love to hear back from you what you do, if anything, and kind of what that looks like and what your thoughts are, and even feedback as far as, you know, I ran into this and I think this is maybe a thought that I've had about even changing something. So Polly, what are your thoughts on, like, I mean, do you see yourself being able to use this here stateside, or like in Cuba, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely stateside, as things do not look like they'll be opening for a very, very long time in Cuba. And Zoom conferences are just not an option there. Eventually, I would love to share it there. But yeah, for now, I'm thinking of my dad's church. They are a smaller church, a lot of elderly congregants. But I think they do have a heart for missions. And so giving them, being able to reproduce the workshop with them, I think would be really beneficial. And especially the 5 different ways you can be involved in missions, I think would be really good for that particular group of people. So I would love to do it with them. Obviously it would be in English, which would be good practice for me to get a good grip on the presentation before later trying to do it all in Spanish. So it would be good practice for me and very beneficial for them. So right now, that's my thought for now, is starting with that small group. The church is open. They can be in there. It's a small congregation anyway, so they're not over capacity or anything. So they can be in there, and we can utilize the facilities at the church. So that's my idea at this point.
Awesome. Rick, I know you mentioned something about like your role within like a Bible school. And you just mentioned that you appreciated that it was able to be reproduced, and you didn't have to put a bunch of time into things. What are your thoughts as far as what you might do with it?
What he says about the
I'm sorry, were you talking to me there?
Sorry, I was. I apologize if I got you at a bad spot.
Oh, that's fine. No, I've just got finished dropping off the kids at school, and I'm just sitting down here at the table, and maybe eat a little breakfast while I'm still listening. So it's a multitask thing for me to put this in, but I'm enjoying this course. So well, I have a lead with the Spanish church in Calgary that has gotten a little cold, but he did ask for something on missions a while ago. But I think this tool might give me the like to put something together myself, or then to wait for the other option that I was talking about. It meant either wait a long time or try to develop something myself, and to go all the way from zero, like not exactly at zero. I've been around missions a long time and been exposed to missions a lot, but to put together a course of this quality is just so far past what I would want to take on right now, or even maybe would have the ability. It would be just such a massive stretch. I don't think I could produce anything like this in 20 years. So anyway, it's I just appreciate that, because saves not having to reinvent the wheel. So with the Spanish church in Calgary, I think I may approach them, because who knows, it may be a good timing for both me and them. And then to be able to offer them something online, maybe something that they would be willing to consider. So I see that as a possibility. And then because we're trying to get this network CommiVom set up here in Canada, we've like I may have said, we've been approved as CommiVom Canada, this small group of guys I'm working with. So so we've got a lot of work ahead of us now, because it's just barely being named now, and then I haven't done a lot of legwork yet on that here in Alberta. So and the west here, well, whatever. So as things continue to open up in the Spanish community here in Canada, then I think more opportunities might come up to do a course like this. So we'll have to see how the network goes. It's dreaming into the future, but start with one and see how that goes. Another aspect of what I would like to see is possibly, partly because I'd like to think of how people could be developed individually. And it's sort of a niche in our world of, I think, individualism is strong. And so, so on the one hand, I think we have to be prepared to step in and say, okay, what answer can we give to the craving for identity and destiny? And then, that only, I don't think a person's sense of calling has to be at odds with their sense of service. As they become more aware of how they should or could serve, then they can be called to serve sacrificially or to serve humbly. But sometimes, anyway, so that's just a thought. So my desire would be to have a course like this be a foundation for call, in terms of call to mission. And then I would like to see what materials I can find to help people determine spiritual gift, or also personality assessment or whatever. I don't want to be, excessively burdened down on the psychological career end. I would like to help people then figure out, personal call, and then kingdom niche as much as possible, in terms of, if you are on a job, how are you leveraging that for the kingdom? Or if you are in some other aspect of life, how can we help people to come to realize you know, maybe not as a permanent position per se, but really how should that person individually effectively try to interact with the whole body of Christ and serve well. So this one, I see this element of mission as a motivational factor, but then I think it needs to be followed up with another course or two on, okay, so how do you direct this motivation into personal conviction and personal, you know, adapting yourself to personal call. So anyway, that's a few thoughts there.
Hey, Rick. If MEF can be of any assistance with what you're trying to do, I have a strong contact with MEF Canada, and I spent some time in Haiti doing some work there with. That's in Western Canada. I'm not sure exactly where he is, but I thought he was in Alberta. So
yeah, he probably is in our town. We have Prairie College, Prairie Bible Institute, Prairie College here.
Yeah,
and they have a training center here just outside of town. So I might even know the guy. What would you think would be a useful way to
Well,
connect?
we just have tons of resources that, I mean, MEF works with all brothers and sisters. We're not denominational or anything like that. We figure we have one CEO and we all are part of the same family, right? So we work well we play well with other kids.
I was impressed with the guy I met, and so I'm yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So through Mauricio, we can get you reach out to Mauricio and get my contact. It's schoonmaker@mef.org.
Okay.
And just send me an email. We'll work that offline. But anybody who's interested in MEF, I'd be more than happy to be the conduit to help us work together, because that's the way we do it. It's just one opportunity, but
yeah,
we encourage everyone we can.
Yeah, great.
Okay,
thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
Rick, are you right in Calgary?
No, Three Hills.
Okay, how far out is that?
It's about an hour from the airport of
Okay.
Calgary.
Just curious, because when you said town, I was like, you know, maybe this guy's like used to really big cities, because where I'm from, like Calgary is bigger than a town.
Yeah. Well, I have lived in Guadalajara for about 9 years, so that's about 7 to 9 million. And so, but no, at Calgary, I'm not calling Calgary a town.
Okay.
Three Hills is 3,500 people or so. It's very small.
No, I understand. When we lived in China, we lived in the 8th largest city in the world, and most people in the U.S. have never even heard of it. It's literally, the city we lived in China is bigger than any Caribbean nation.
Wow. What's it called?
Chengdu.
Oh yeah. Wow.
I always tell people, most people don't really know of Chengdu. The things that they're most famous for is it's the World Panda Research Site, and if you ever saw, you remember that it was an animated movie called Kung Fu Panda.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
That whole setting was based just out, like, even though it was animated, it was based on there's a mountain right outside of Chengdu that it was based on. So
very cool. Yeah. I was amazed the number of huge cities in China, like just the volume of people there. It's like 30 cities over 500,000 or 1 million or something like that. It's just amazing.
Yeah, Chengdu's about 15 million.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And everything's numbers in China. So about 10% of China is Christian. So that doesn't seem like a high percentage, but then when you figure out the numbers, that's insane numbers, you know? So, you know, that means in one city you have 1.5 million Christians, you know, and it's like, well, no, percentage wise, it's not that huge, but numbers is like, oh, wow, that's 1.5 million Christians in one city, you know? It's so strange. It's hard to comprehend all of it, even when you're there, you know. It's like, there's just so many people, and yeah, it's kind of mind blowing.
Mhm.
Okay, so do you guys feel like after seeing, I mean, you saw the slides, really the slides, the PowerPoints are kind of the, I would say it's in many ways it's the, everything is built around, like, it doesn't have to be, but the slides, the PowerPoints provide kind of a backbone or a framework to work off of. So if you saw the slides, they basically, everything else you're doing, you don't have to use the slides in a setting where you can't or something like that, but what that does is just in your mind, it provides a framework for building off of, if that makes sense. And so even when you look at the facilitator's manual, everything is broken down by the slides. So as you're going through, like your notes and your scriptures and things like that are broken down based on what PowerPoint slide you're on. And I mean, you kind of have an idea if you're, for example, in an actual classroom setting or a church, something like where you're running these, like a normal seminar, as you're going through it, you kind of know where to click onto the next slide and all of this. So I would say if you're running a seminar in person, it's really good to familiarize yourself with that facilitator's manual. And obviously, like Scott said, make it your own, but familiarize yourself with, okay, here's what we're going over when we're on this slide. Here's how we're going to introduce this section. And then it makes it a lot easier, as you're going through those slides, then it becomes more natural. And this was very difficult for me because I am very much a person that likes in-person communication. I really don't love these Zoom meetings and things like this. I wish we could all be together. I'm very grateful that we're able to do this, but also having real people with you, and you get that feedback, and that, there's a different feeling and emotion that goes with that than what you can really convey using Zoom. And when you break into your groups and have people discuss things and things like that, it's just great seeing real people interact, and you're able to, I feel like it's a little more relational that way. And that's one of the other aspects. Depending on the scenario, we've had denominations that have used this in their churches. So for example, we've had churches that will say, hey, we're going to run a seminar for our church, or we're going to use the Storyline study book and make all of our small groups go through the Storyline study book in a small group setting. So those are kind of a couple different things. On the other hand, a lot of what we have done in the Caribbean, especially in places like Trinidad and Tobago, is we'll have multiple organizations that will partner together to advertise for this seminar and then come together. So I love that, because you get people that maybe wouldn't normally be in the same room together. One of our seminars that we had, I was so amazed. We had Pentecostals from several different denominations. We had Seventh-day Adventists. We had Baptists. We had Presbyterians. So all these people were in the same room. People of Indian background as well as African background, all coming together. And so the conversations that people were having that they might not have normally had, because they're kind of divided in their own brand of Christianity, those things started to happen more. And so in my opinion, yes, there's issues in every place, but one of the things that I like to see that has happened in Trinidad and Tobago is most of their mission sending is not denominational based. And I like to see that, because it's, for example, most of the denominations they were behind in setting up mission sending. So what happened is organizations like what I call parachurch organizations would start mission organizations, and the denominations have been humble enough to recognize that, hey, we could start our own mission sending branch, but there is an established mission sending group already here, so let's use them. Let's partner with them, and we can potentially be stronger than if we were to try to, as Rick said, reinvent the wheel and develop our whole platform of mission sending and all of that. So I think that's a really good model. There again, that's just my opinion. I like to see unity. I like to see people of differing viewpoints coming together. So that's just something I enjoy seeing, because I think that us as the body of Christ can be stronger if we were together rather than kind of in our own divisions. There again, it can also be complicated because, you know, you start factoring in different people's theologies and it can get quite difficult. But also, I think that's what can then in turn make us stronger. So every place is a little different. For example, in Cuba, we have mostly worked within, we have worked with some of our Comibomb connections there, where we're working within 2 different denominations, but it really feels as though there's a lot more denominational division there. I mean, in my opinion, it feels like most of what we do is like, okay, we're working with this denomination. They might even try to include other people, but it seems as though a lot of people are reluctant to that. Would you agree with that, Polly? That there can be a lot of
Yes, definitely.
yeah. I mean, I see in Cuba, of all places that I've traveled, I see probably the most division between Protestant evangelicals and Pentecostals.
Mm-hmm.
Often, like, there's a big division between the two, whereas a lot of places that I work, usually Protestants as a whole stick together, you know, whether you're Pentecostal or whether you're Baptist, you know, they might be like, yeah, I think they're a little weird or whatever, but hey, we still work together. But in Cuba, it seems interesting because I feel like there is quite a division between those 2 groupings.
Yeah, and a lot of it runs deep with political affiliation of the denominations, and it's complicated. Certain denominations are more affiliated with the regime than others, so it's
yeah.
What are the groups that you are working with there? The denominations you mentioned your
Well,
contact.
and there again, that's kind of political within the denomination.
Mm-hmm.
We've found. So the one denomination that we're working with, I'm very close with their mission director. Love the guy, but I have my reluctancies with the guy that's really heading up the denomination. So I probably shouldn't mention the denomination.
Sure.
I think that they're doing really good things, but there's also, Cuba's interesting as far as, like, you know, you have sometimes denominational leads that are like living nicer life than most of us here in the US. It's kind of weird, you know, and I feel really uncomfortable. I don't understand what's happening. And so, yeah, but the mission director, he is just an amazing man. Him and his wife, we stayed at their house for a couple of weeks, and they were just the sweetest people. And I still stay in really close contact with them. Very humble, very, very Cuban. You know, they don't live outside of their means or anything. But yeah, I don't fully understand. I've actually stepped back a little bit in some of our work in Cuba and let my friend Frank, because he's been working in Cuba for 25 years, and he speaks, you know, he's Puerto Rican, and so there is a natural connection between Cuba and Puerto Rico. And yeah, I love Cuba, and I want to, you know, once things open back up, I'll go back again. But I've let someone who's more seasoned and understands all the intricacies of Cuban, both government politics and church politics, kind of take more of the lead in that area. Because it's hard, you know, being a gringo, you know, it's easy to cast judgment and think you see the way things are, and you can, you know, be like, well, that's crazy, you know, and, you know, I probably don't know all the background details of what's going on. So yeah. No, I think you guys seem like you have a really good handle on like the actual seminar aspects. I think it's a matter of, especially during this time, modifying and using it how it fits in best. Because I think that there again, even the study, so the other files that I sent, for all of you, they probably will be very handy. I sent the Spanish files as well, and the Spanish and English versions of the Storyline study book. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to open that yet, but the Storyline study book it can be used a lot of different ways. Like I mentioned, we've had churches, there was a church actually in Costa Rica that they were, I didn't follow up on that, but one of my friends was helping to make that happen, where they were going to require all of their small groups to go through the book. And so there's a lot of different ways that can be used and done. I think depending on where you're at, the desire to do things, whether it be some places have a higher desire to do like a seminar, whereas some places have more of a desire to use the study book and small groups. And there again, you can still use the videos with the book. Like for example, if people are meeting and they want to break down the study guidebook and meet weekly, well, they can watch the videos as they, kind of like I remember back in the day when my wife would go to those Beth Moore Bible studies, you'd have like a video before or after or something, so it's kind of that same deal. And I can send those videos separately. I'm not sure if the videos went through. Please let me know if the videos came through, because we have different versions of the videos. We have like the high, the 4K version, and then we have like the standard resolution versions, which is almost always what I use, because when you're dealing with technology in other places, sometimes the 4K versions can be difficult to get to work. But yeah, that's like a really good option, those study books. So even you guys in Uganda, your people that the Cuban people, the Cuban doctors that you said you knew of, it's possible that you're able to say, hey, are you interested in missions? And they might say, yeah, I love missions. And you might be able to print off a copy, or somehow get them depending on what your device is. Like what I've done with that PDF version is I can save it to my phone as like a PDF, and then just use my phone. So that works really well for like in Cuba, where printing is expensive. People would use that on their phone. You just save that file to your phone, and then you can scroll through it like any other ebook or whatever. So
yeah, the videos did come.
Okay.
In English. Obviously, they're not in Spanish, right?
Well, there should be. I sent 2 files. There should be an English and a Spanish drive link.
Oh, yeah, I did. But are the videos on there?
They should. I didn't check. So there again, this was like in a Google Drive folder, and so I didn't check. The Spanish ones should be in there, but if they're not, let me know, because I'll resend those once we're done today.
So there is a Spanish version of the videos?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't find any video folder in the Spanish.
Okay.
Folder.
Okay. So I will send. We have Spanish both with where it's just subtitles. So there's 2 different options. There's the one with subtitles, so it's just like English but with all Spanish subtitles. And then we also have one that is like a voice over in Spanish. Does that make sense? Because if you go to, depending on where you're going, some people are very, very proficient at reading, but some people aren't so much. So we have done it both ways. John, you were raising your hand.
Our little church is very small, 30, 40 people. There's 2 missionaries from our little church that one is in Jordan area working with Muslims, and another is in a Muslim country. And I think in our little church, a tool like this would be helpful. I still think there's the sixth part of this that is the helper, but I kind of think from what I hear is that it's in the mobilization, because Josh, you consider yourself a mobilizer mainly, and yet I hear from your examples of things that you do is helping others, the chainsaws and things like that. The other thing I wanted to say, in Costa Rica, there is a sending agency for missionaries, multi-denominational, and Costa Rica has been able to send missionaries abroad quite a bit. It's called FEDEMEC in Costa Rica. And for Rick, espero que no se le olvide el español, que siga hablando en la iglesia de Calgary, that you keep practicing your Spanish in Calgary.
Es que tengo tutora en casa.
Caramba.
Entonces no es muy probable que se me olvide el español. No se preocupe.
You got a helper there, huh? Good.
Yeah, I got a home-based tutor, so it's not gonna run.
I have to leave. I have to be at the hospital shortly, but I'll say goodbye for now, and thanks for your encouragement. Hi, Sam. Hi, Elisha. All the way across far away, and Mauricio. Hasta luego. Bye-bye.
Bye. No, I think that's, I remember one of the first times I went to Costa Rica, and there again, that's getting to be the new normal, where we hear those reports from all over the world. And I think that is the shift that's occurring within global Christianity, is where we see, I mean, I don't know how many Costa Rican missionaries are serving abroad. I don't know if there's anybody that has any solid numbers on that, but I think that we see across Latin America, the Caribbean, as well as sub-Saharan Africa, there's a growing number of mission workers that are being sent from these places that we used to maybe perceive, as Samuel shared, we used to perceive as places that were mission receiving. But I don't know the numbers for sure on Uganda, but I know that per capita, the largest population of evangelical Christians of any country in the world is Kenya. So when you think about that, that shows I'm sure Uganda's right up there too, as far as the percentages of people who claim to be evangelical Christians. So when you think about what era we're going into, it's pretty exciting. That's a very different picture than what we would have seen 100 years ago, Now, one of the things that I wanted to touch on also is, as you all do reproduce this in one way, shape, or form, one of the things that I see as very important is connecting with the people that you are doing the course with, like a continual connection. So get their emails. A lot, and this is all in your information if you read through like how to do the seminar and stuff. But like a lot of times what we'll do is when people come in, since we do it usually on a Saturday is how we do it, because that's kind of across the board, where the day that works, you start on a Saturday morning because it's the day that people have off. And so you start on like a Saturday morning, people come in, you might have coffee or tea or something and maybe a snack. And as people are entering, you take down their information. That way you can stay in touch with them and ask them how you can serve them going forward. You get their email, you find out maybe what they do, or, where they're from, in your region, whatever that might look like for you, whatever you see is like vital information to have. And that way, as you go forward, you can actually keep that relationship open and track with these people and say, hey, how can I serve you? And hey, are you reproducing this? You know, tell me about how it's going for you. Let me know how we can do things different. The same types of things that I'm asking you guys. Another thing that is important is at the end. So when we're actually in other countries, I don't send people, like I have to send to you guys all like a Google Drive link. Well, normally I have a flash drive that I have all the files that need to be on it. And I actually give those away at the end. So like I don't necessarily give them to everyone, every single person, but like we'll say there is I'll just make up something. We'll say there is a representative, you know, Scott's there from his ministry, and he's there with 4 other guys, right? Well, I'll kind of find out who's kind of maybe in charge of that group, and then give them this flash drive, so that way they can then distribute it to their people. There's 2 reasons I do that. First of all, I want them to have everything they need on that flash drive, and second of all, I would rather do it that way than have them trying to come to me and I'm trying to use their flash drive and get it into my computer and get the files. It can be kind of messy. So yeah, there's a little cost involved, but you can get flash drives pretty cheap anymore, and you can get all the files you need on a little flash drive. I don't know about you guys in Uganda, if that's a good way to pass things off, or if there's maybe a better way. But what are your thoughts, Elisha? Are flash drives pretty common? I mean, do most people use them still? I think you're muted, Elisha.
I was saying that fast papers are good. They use them here. They use them. They are usable here. People are using computers and they are doing projection. When you're doing a seminar, people use them, especially in the urban setting, town settings, where they have facilities. They use them.
And you can use your own judgment too, those of you that are in Uganda, because maybe it's easier. Maybe it's like a deal for you guys where people bring their own flash drive and then you share the files that way or something. Whatever you see is the easiest way to do that. But for me, that's very important to be able to give those files, and then also really try to encourage people to reproduce it. One of the things that our counterpart in Russia has done is they said they want to see them reproduce it within 30 days. So, I mean, it's kind of a challenge out there, you know, to say, hey, like, so there's been a lot of churches in Russia and Ukraine that have went through this, and it helps because there's been denominations that have sponsored it, you know, and said, hey, we want all of our churches to go through this. And, you know, it's good because it helps people, it helps everyone to be like, when you use these terms, you know, for example, when you use the word missions, when you use the word sending, those types of things, then everyone understands what you're saying. We have the same vocabulary. One thing that can be a struggle is, we'll say I use the word missions. Well, my neighbor next to me might think something totally different when I say the word missions than what I am meaning. So the part of the goal in this is to help us have some common word usage, you know, that we understand. Like when we say mobilization in the Christian context, here's what we're talking about. Because the word mobilization can mean a lot of things, right? We mobilize resources to fight COVID. You know what I mean? We have all these ways in which we can use the word mobilize. But yeah, it just helps us to be able to communicate. Wow. We have
If I could-
Maxwell's now.
if I can just mention one thing, one of the number one rules for computer security is don't use anybody else's flash drive.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you're going to do that, be extremely careful because that's the easiest way to get viruses on your computer.
Yeah. When I
So
wasn't
giving them out is a good idea.
when I wasn't sure how they do it in Uganda, that's the only reason I was referring to, because I know that, you know, resources are maybe a little bit more difficult as far as I don't know if you guys have the ability to buy multiple flash drives to give out. I wasn't sure how that might work, but you guys know probably what the best practices are in the Ugandan context and the best way to get files to people. So we'll trust you with that in that context.
Definitely, yeah, the challenge as you talked about, resources are difficult. So what the most common way is printing the materials, and people have they put the materials in the files. That's a little bit okay, but again, printing is a little bit a booklet. If it has many pages, it becomes difficult. But that's the easiest. People leaders can easily get the materials on the just in files, print files, then people get them done on the drives. Yeah, that kind of, because if someone used the drives, he may reach in a place where there is no electricity, there is no internet, this and the other. So, but if you got the printed materials and file, that's most of what is common and a little bit easy.
No, that makes sense. And then when you do get people's information, obviously you're not getting information to try to somehow, if they're not within your ministry, make sure you're not like trying to somehow, I don't know, reach out to them for your ministry purposes. This information you're getting from them is related to mission mobilization. Does that make sense? Like, we don't want to be like, oh wow, now we got these people's information and we can try to do whatever with it. It's like, no, we have their information because we want to communicate with them specifically on mission mobilization and what we're doing with that, rather than trying to propagate our own ministry or something like that, because we're there to serve them. That's really why we're doing this. We want to help them and their ministry succeed. We're there kind of as a selfless servant, not so much as like, hey, now you can be like one of us. And it's not, we don't want it to be done in that way. Does that make sense?
It does.
So especially when we're dealing with things across churches, and we want to try to act in a unifying way and not not do something that's not honoring to that other person or organization. But I think that's very important to get their information, because it helps, even if you do follow up down the road, or you're planning another seminar maybe in another area. You can reach out to those people and you can say, hey, invite anyone you might know in this area, and it's a good way to stay in touch. And then, like I said, for me, it's really nice to be able to get some feedback. A lot of times people forget to write back to me or anything, but then I'll reach out to some of the people and ask. Like, there was a guy in Cuba. I just reached out to him one day. I was thinking about him and I asked him how things have been going, and he said his entire church had now been through the seminar. And so I was like, oh wow, that's encouraging, and he said he was encouraging them to at least share the principles with people that they knew. They might not be people that could necessarily run a seminar or had the capacity to do so, but they then were able to share those principles. And so it's like anything, as we talk about things, it becomes more normal. If we talk about evangelizing and we start to practice it, it becomes a more normal thing. if we practice, if we talk about missions and we start to practice it, it then becomes more normal and not so much the abnormal thing to be doing or talking about. So do you guys have any more questions on actually running or doing the seminar?
Yeah, so when you, I mean, I suppose it would become obvious when we review all the material. You know, I don't know how to ask it in a simple way, but maybe when you want to start up a course, is there certain, where do you start with all that material? Like, what's the first files you're looking at, or what do you?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Rick. Honestly, so the very first thing, usually when I'm planning a seminar, we plan a lot of times a couple months out, because usually prior to COVID, I'm planning a trip. I'm going to be going somewhere. Yeah, a seminar is going to be at this point, I'm usually not running seminars, because we passed it on to the people in the countries where we're working. But there's times where I will come in and maybe teach a section, with one of our partners somewhere, because like my friend Clifton said, it's kind of, there's still, even though, like he said, even though it's wrong in some ways, there is a little bit of weight to someone from the United States coming in and teaching about a subject. The people have an automatic respect for you because you're from the United States, and it's like he said, it's silly, it's dumb, but it's the way it is. And so he's like, let's leverage that. So they, like, for example, in 3 sections, I might teach one of those 3 sections because it kind of gives them validity, if that makes sense. Like, people see, oh, because this guy came and he's working with them, that they must really know what they're doing. I hate it. He hates it, but he's like, we also, let's just admit that right now we're still in that season of trying to step out of that role. We don't like that, but it's also, it is the way that it is. And so we sometimes leverage that. That being said, so we plan maybe a couple months out, and a lot of times what I will do is I will send I think in that file, I will look really quick, but there should be kind of just some like basic, if not, I don't think it is in the English one. I will send that also. Like, we have just like a basic, like it'll say like storyline and kind of like a graphic. Well, they'll take that a lot of times and then like mix that with their own ministry's logo and stuff. I let them do whatever they want to do for promotion. I'm at the point where I don't do any of that promotion stuff. I'll send them stuff, and then they can, we'll say there's 5 ministries coming together, and they'll take our storyline logo and they'll put it with theirs, and they'll start advertising. You guys have probably seen that in different countries. Advertising a lot of times looks a lot different. How they put things together, and some places Facebook is the way that they're getting it out there. Some places it's emails. Some places they print things out and they put them up in their churches, and that draws attention. So that's usually the first step, is getting all of that out there. And then when you're actually doing the seminar, the first thing I'm pulling up is my PowerPoint for lesson 1. And the first slide in that PowerPoint is just the basic storyline logo, which says a new mission force is emerging, and I just have that up there as people are coming in. So it's kind of gives, if you have that, if you have the screen and all that stuff, I just have that up there, so it's all ready to go. And that's where I start, is the first slide of lesson 1 is that, and it's the same with lesson 2 and lesson 3. So I have that pulled up, and then I'm ready to go. And I've got a clicker thing and stuff. And so when I'm doing things, almost always I bring my own computer and plug into whatever they have for their projector system, because I've run into so many situations where, you know, you bring your flash drive, you try to plug it into whatever the church has or whatever and you know, you can't, maybe their PowerPoint version is not compatible with your PowerPoint version or whatever. So if possible, I'm just bringing, I've got a little laptop, have all my files I know on there, and I bring different adapters with me, you know, to make sure that I'm able to plug into some of the old style, you know, connections, you know, and things like that. And, you know, go from there. And there's been times, especially, I would say, surprisingly enough, I've probably had easier times in Haiti than Cuba, you know, just because of the compatibility issues sometimes in Cuba. I mean, a lot of times their equipment they're using is 20 years old, and you know, they know how to make it work with what they have, but then you're bringing like a new factor in, you know, and it's like, but I don't think there's probably going to be a lot of places that are any more difficult than Cuba as far as. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, if I'm able to use my PowerPoints in Cuba, I should be able to use them in most places, you know. But yeah, that's honestly, Rick. I mean, essentially, you just need those 3 lessons of PowerPoints, and those videos. I can't remember, so I have, because it's been a while, I have them on my computer. So sometimes one of the issues that you can have is within the PowerPoints, I don't think that the videos are embedded into them right now. I have them embedded into them on my computer, so they're ready to go. But one of the issues can be, like, a lot of times, like, for example, in Cuba, if they're embedded into the PowerPoint, they won't, you can't get them to play because it won't be like compatible with what they have. So I will have to have those videos pulled up separately. And when it's time for the video, I have to click and then play the video. And so there's been times where I've just not even done the videos because it's too hard to get them to load and to pull up. So, I mean, that can be an issue that you run into too, depending on how rural you are. Potentially, you guys in Uganda might run into some of those issues. There again, if you have them downloaded on your own laptop, if you have one, everything is a lot less difficult because then all you have to do is hook that laptop up to whatever they have for a projector system, and you're good to go. So planning ahead is definitely good. Like if you can be there early to make sure things work, just helps. But I know I gave you way more talking than you asked for, Rick, but
Thanks. So you're saying if you have them embedded and on your own drive, then they'll run fine, right?
yeah, like I actually have them on my hard drive on my computer, and so like I know it works and I have it ready. I just have like a file. I keep it on my desktop, you know. So I just pull that up, and then I don't have to worry about anything. I do bring with always a flash drive that has the same files on it in case, because so for example, the first time I went to Cuba, our religious visa got denied, but I'd already had my tickets bought, so I went as a tourist, and I didn't think we were going to do our seminar. Well, then kind of at the last minute, they said, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to just kind of keep it under the radar. And thankfully I didn't bring my laptop with because I didn't know, you know, because we lived in China, and there's pretty high surveillance in China. I mean, they'll look at stuff. And so I didn't bring any of my study guides, like none of that stuff I brought, but I had my flash drive. And so I was able to make it work using the flash drive. So I try to just have multiple things prepared in case. I mean, they printed off the notes, for the seminar. They printed them off in Cuba, and it was hilarious because I had to go to like 2 different places because the one place ran out of ink. You know, I mean, it's like everything. You know, everything is difficult in Cuba. It's like making copies can take like a day. You know, but you know, it all works out, and it's not. We're pretty spoiled here in North America. Yeah. So any other questions regarding actually running the seminar? So, okay, so as we kind of wrap things up today, where we're going to go next week, just so you know, I mean, I want you guys to be able to look this over. You'll have a week to look things over. I'll send those videos, those Spanish videos, along with some other promotional stuff that I think I missed in that last email sending to you guys. And then going forward, we want to talk about, Scott mentioned a couple of things about direction going forward. Generally speaking, our focus with Storyline, like we're not taking away from any other type of ministry activity, but church planting tends to be our biggest goal because of the fact that that's where everything else flows out of. So if you're going to some area where there's no churches, well, it's hard to do other ministry without having any church base. Like, for example, we talked about the Bahamas. When I went to the Bahamas, that was kind of our, it's like, oh, well, we'll start with the churches, right? Because they were usually the only ones left after. They're the ones where people would go to for food, for shelter, for things like that when all other institutions had broken down. So that's why we focus on church planting among the unreached, because it's hard to do the other things without the church there, as well as believing that is, if we believe scripture, that is kind of the method in which everything else is done. So, so one of the things that we'll have for an opportunity after this is done is we work in partnership, have for the last year, with an organization based out of Kansas City that does a lot of church planting training. And they've got some stuff online. And so I'll give you guys some more information. I'll send you a link to check out some of their stuff, because if you're interested in more specific church planting training and how to plant very simple churches, we're not talking like building buildings, anything like that. We're talking about like, okay, you go into an area and there's no Christians at all. What is a way in which we can start going into these areas? So I'll share a link with them. The ministry is called All Nations. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of All Nations, but they're known for having very good, if you're looking at simple church planting training, they're known for having some of the best. And we did in January before COVID, we worked with them in Trinidad and Tobago. And it was really kind of sad, because we did this church planting training for about 30 Trinidadians, and there was some Tobagonians, some Grenadians as well. And they were planning on going to India, and then COVID happened. So that was kind of frustrating, but still, it's really good to have this kind of in your pocket. And I feel like it's very good information for all of us to be mindful of, even when it comes to just doing evangelism in our communities, like kind of stripping down all that Christian lingo that we sometimes use, and all of that. Just assuming that maybe this person doesn't know anything about those wordings that we often use, and how do we look for those who are spiritually interested, all of those types of principles, things like maybe you've heard of the term a person of peace, a lot of times can open up entire communities. And so if you're at all interested in that, I will send that information, and that as we wrap up, because we've got 2 weeks left after this week, and we'll be going through a couple of other things related the next 2 weeks, but I want to be able to open up that possibility for follow-up if any of you are looking for something after we're done. Or maybe you know people in your sphere of influence that are interested in that. I would recommend it. So any other questions? We're going to end here in a couple minutes. So you guys have any other questions?
I'm like appreciating this because entirely, I think we told you our ministry is entirely our heartbeat is church planting, and we are looking forward to do more church planting in Uganda and outside Uganda. We are looking at Burundi, which is Bujumbura. We actually put already one church in Burundi, and we are looking at Southern Sudan, and also we are looking at Congo majorly. And we are starting, we would have started actually this school that we call Missions and Church Planting School, where we want to be teaching people for 1 year, like teaching them 1 month, and then in between the school holidays, we also teach them 1 month and another month, and that 3 months. And but we're looking at mission the church planting school because this is a time when we go to do church planting. So I'm thinking how we are going to incorporate these mission materials into this school. It would have started. We want to start it. The moment we get the opportunity, we want to start this training center. And we really, I think God connected us with this ministry for help and support into that. So I'm happy that you're connecting us with other people are having church planting and missions God. So I want that. We want that.
Great. If nobody else has any more feedback or questions, let's end just a bit early today. And then we'll begin kind of wrapping things up next week. We want to talk about some church planting principles next week, but also kind of, there again, I'm not going to get too far into that. I just want to begin to open things up for if that's a desire you guys have in the future and want to go down that road further, we can point you in that direction. But so if nobody else has any other questions, let's close in prayer. Somebody want to pray? You know, that's one thing people usually don't rush into, right? Is volunteering to pray.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day and another opportunity to be together and to study and to learn. Father, we are just so grateful for Josh and his willingness to share with us. I ask that you would just continue to help us internalize this information and Lord, help us to be sensitive to how you're leading each of us to use this material for the furtherance of your kingdom. And we pray these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
See you all again. Yeah. Have a good day.
Bye.